Every day, we spend time thinking about what we're going to eat. And we make these decisions based off of a variety of factors. Some of them could be what's the cheapest thing for us. Some of us might be concerned with the nutritional value in the short term or the long-term health effects. Or potentially, we choose it based off of what's most convenient. In fact, our culture nowadays idolizes food. We have dedicated social media pages just for restaurants or just local food in general. Yet despite how much time we spend thinking about what we're going to eat, how many of us have ever stopped to consider that what we put on our plate may have consequences for the environment? My name is Maxwell Armenta. I'm a master's student in the environmental engineering program, and today I want to talk to you guys about our relationship to food and how it could impact the environment. So first I want to get a feel of the room though. Just raise your hands if you've eaten meat in the last week. And I promise I'm not going to demonize anyone. Yeah. All right. Now keep those hands raised if what you ate was beef or a red meat product. Now keep those hands raised again if you've had red meat or beef today. Okay, cool. Wow, cool. Okay, so now I got to fill the room. The reason I picked out beef in particular, not to be a bully, but it's because there is very specific and a relatively greater impact that beef has on the environment. A paper actually by Eschel et al., this was done in 2014, this is what brought my attention to this subject matter, showed that beef is not only the most taxing on irrigated water demands, not even so more than pork, chicken, and rice, but it's actually 8 times greater than the next leading resource. And so this is pretty bad, especially since California has the real California cows, real California cheese. A lot of places are growing cattle that don't really necessarily have the resources to do so sustainably. And so being in Washington, you may think, well, how does this affect me? We have plenty of water. It rains every day. It's actually, beef is also a major contributor for greenhouse gases. And here's how. So cattle produce methane, and methane is a pretty lethal greenhouse gas. In fact, it's estimated to be about 25 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And on top of that, you have the industrial process where you have to package the beef, ship it out, grow it, which is an industrial process on its own. And if it's not grass-fed, you have to even bring in that feed, which further contributes more CO2 because you're moving around natural resources. In fact, this is so bad that based on the study done by Eschel et al., it shows that about 60% of the CO2 from the livestock they were analyzing, which was mainly chicken, pork, and beef, that was coming straight from beef. So that's more than rice, more than wheat, more than pork, more than chicken, more than eggs, all combined. So the clearest message is that beef is by far the least environmentally efficient animal category. But why do we still eat it? Since this is largely mainstream media news nowadays, right? Well, if we look at the dietary facts, then you can tell I shop mostly at Trader Joe's. These are all from the internet and from what I found in my fridge. You see that out of the meat products, chicken's actually pretty efficient. You got 20% protein per calorie. But if you look at beef in particular, you're only seeing about 8% protein per calorie ratio, despite the fact that a lot of people would lead you to believe that beef's a pretty good protein source, right? Now, if you compare that to other vegetarian options, such as a can of black beans or brown eggs or tofu, it's pretty comparable. In fact, if you look at just black beans to typical boneless beef ribeye steak, they're very similar in their protein to calorie ratio, and it turns out black beans are only 99 cents. So it makes sense economically, and it makes sense for the environment. But then again, there's the whole debate that this is tradition. Historically, my grandfather ate hamburgers, my dad ate hamburgers, now I'm gonna eat hamburgers. And I did used to eat hamburgers as a disclaimer up until 2 years ago. I started cutting out cold turkey, not cold beef. But this made sense, and it was okay in the past. And I don't want to victimize meat or any type of industry in general, but in the early 1900s, we were around 2 billion in terms of population. So you could have people eating burgers all over the world, and maybe it wouldn't have had as much of an impact. In today's society, though, we have 7.6 billion people on this planet, and it's only going to continue to grow. So now, the people who are eating hamburgers in the past and their families were eating hamburgers, that's more people who are eating hamburgers. And on top of that, as we get further and further along in the 21st century, we're going to see more development, which means that you're going to have more societies wanting higher forms of protein, mainly being industrialized meats. And that has a huge tax on the environment. So this is based off of self-reported American calorie intake. So it's probably significantly higher. But based off of this data from 2010, we can see that the average person has 2,200 calories that they intake in a day, which means that in your average lifetime, assuming you grow to be 80, which we might even grow to be older than that, that's 65 million calories in your entire lifetime that you get to choose how you spend. And that's a lot of burgers. So if you were to reduce that by just let's say half, you could see how easily you as an individual could have a huge impact on CO2 emissions across the globe. So next time you're sitting down at the dinner table and you're thinking about what should I eat, I urge you to consider trying to go for something a little more environmentally friendly. Do your research and think about how is what I'm putting into my body not only impacting me, but how will it impact my kids and my grandchildren further on. You see, we have two paths now. We can keep going down the mainstream road, blinded by the ads we see on TV, or potentially our ignorance on what we're actually doing by eating our meals. And that could lead us into a dangerous place. Or perhaps we can venture off into more potentially healthy alternatives, and also alternatives that could help us change the world. So thank you for your time. I'll take questions if you have any.
I have a question about the rice.
Yeah.
What's the deal with rice being so
high in water?
Yeah.
So, again, so my background is not at all in food. This is just something that kind of interests me, so I look at the papers. But from what I understand, rice is a pretty water-intensive crop in general.
They tend to have to flood it for a while for it to really grow well. I was just reading about the production of rice recently. I'm in nutrition sciences.
Okay.
So it's, I don't know like a ton about it, but I believe that there's several time periods where it needs to be.
Right, they completely flood the fields.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that requires more water.
Yeah. Also, correct me if I was incorrect on anything on the presentation.
Oh, we just were talking in class about how beef, for both those things, it does require a huge amount of water, and it's, what was the other thing you were talking about?
Greenhouse gas emissions.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. So, no,
Cool.
it sounded good. So do you eat ground turkey burgers?
I actually
Or do you-
was it
Beef?
what's it when you just eat fish?
Pescatarian?
Oh,
yeah, I guess
Pescatarian.
Pescatarian. Okay, so pescatarian.
I'm a Episcopalian. I'm pescatarian now.
Okay.
But I actually have been going, whenever I cook at home, though, I make it a practice to really only eat produce, or either quinoa, rice, and then maybe canned beans. So I typically try to eat only vegetarian at home, and I'm very successful with that. When I go out to eat, though, I'm a little more loose, and I'll eat fish. Although in my recent studies, if I had to advocate one form of meat, I would be chicken. Chicken, I think, would be good in terms of sustainability.
The only problem with chicken is just the factory farms and
Yeah,
stuff.
there's a lot of other ethical
Right, they're
things you can bring in.
whole other topic.
But just from an environmental
Yeah.
greenhouse, global warming standpoint,
Yeah.
is what we got. Any other questions? Cool. If anyone ever wants to contact me and get any of my sources, if you want to look at this material yourself, I have all the papers saved, so feel free to reach out to Trey, and I would be happy to forward that along to you.